Nick Lodolo going to be on the mound tonight, game one against the Diamondbacks. Reds coming off that off day yesterday. They wrapped up a series with the Brewers, not the Cubs. My apologies. I got something wrong. I get something wrong all the time. I'm going to say it again. It is what it is. I don't know why people get mad when I say that. I don't really care because it is what it is.
It's just passive.
Yeah. It's like, it is what it is.
Like, what are you going to do?
Diamondbacks coming off of a wild game with the Braves, by the way. Diamondbacks 31-31, an 11-10 final over the Braves. They put up 7 runs in the top of the 9th inning to come back to win that one.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
Glad they got that win. Really, really glad they got that win, because now this means we don't play a team below 500 for like a full month, and that'll take the sting out of it when you can have that stat in your back pocket when they go on a losing streak. If the Diamondbacks came in here 1 game below 500, that would have ruined a perfectly good stat.
Brutal. But the Diamondbacks might have put 7 runs up, and they might have put more runs up in the top of the 9th inning against the Braves than what the Reds might put up in the total series against the D-backs.
More or less.
More. I'll say more.
Okay, Reds scored more than 7
runs. We're going to get to our predictions here shortly, but big one tonight with Nick Lodolo on the mound either way. So we're talking about Josh Naylor being linked to the Reds and one of the, it's I keep saying the draft, the trade deadline, not too far off in the distance. So as we sit here in early June, as we get further into June and into July, these trade rumors and reports are going to pick up pretty heavily. And as we discussed earlier, there are some moves you make at the deadline that are supposed to put you in position to make a run in the back half. There's other moves that you make at the deadline that, okay, we're not as good as we thought. We're blowing this up and you're just shaving off, high payroll guys. And then there's other moves that we rarely see, but they do happen. We saw it in 2019 with the Reds when they traded for Trevor Bauer. Trevor Bauer was, with the Cleveland Indians and Terry Francona at the time. The Reds traded for him, and it wasn't, if they got lucky and made a run down the back half of 2019, that's great. It was always about kickstarting a run into the next offseason, or that offseason, if you will, where they added Nick Castellanos and Mike Moustakas. I saw in the chat earlier, yes, Shogo Akiyama, Shogo Akiyama was supposed to be a big addition. I have his bobblehead still.
Do you?
Oh yeah, that was big. But the bottom line is, there's a lot of different directions you can go at the deadline, but there's one direction I hope the Reds don't go in, and that's the direction of even entertaining the idea of moving on from a guy like Chase Burns, their number 1 pitching prospect. We've talked a lot about Chase Burns this week. We started the week talking about the fact that Nick Krall had said that, they're in no hurry to promote Chase Burns throughout the Reds farm system. We're not even asking for him to be called up to the Major League roster, but we're just wondering why he's still just hanging out down in Chattanooga. Why isn't he in Louisville? My theory at the time was that, hey, he's kind of like that very, very talented backup quarterback on a team where you have a rough starting quarterback, and it's going to create a lot of noise and a lot of drama that you don't want. Shedeur Sanders is a prime example. Now, I don't want to compare Chase Burns to Shedeur Sanders, but it's that scenario where the second Chase Burns gets to Louisville, the clock will start ticking on the anxiousness of the fans saying, why isn't he here? Why isn't he here? And then, sure and behold, a spot opens up because Hunter Greene goes on the 15-day IL, which who's kidding? I don't know when we're going to see Hunter Greene again next as far as that goes. But the bottom line is, Chase Burns was involved in a trade rumor that was out there. The article I have right here from Cincinnati Reds on SI. Again, shout out to Greg Kuffner using this article here. But Jarren Duran's name has been brought up a lot recently in trade talks. Bleacher Report ranked their best 10 trade packages for him and the trade rumors. 28-year-old is slashing 273, 318, 424 with 27 extra base hits and 13 stolen bases on the season for Boston. That sounds like a pretty fun guy to be able to, get for the Reds. But what would you have to get up to get a talent like that? Well, as you see here, again, Bleacher Report, what the trade proposal would be. The Cincinnati Reds would get outfielder Jarren Duran. Boston Red Sox would get Graham Ashcraft. I'm willing to part ways with Graham Ashcraft if you can get a Jarren Duran.
No question.
I'm even willing to move on from Chase Petty if you can get a talent like Jarren Duran. But the wrinkle, and shame on them, by the way, for putting this in the middle. Chase Burns, that's the name right there. The Reds' number 2, number 1 prospect. We're not moving on from Chase Burns. I would not mind getting a talent like that. Don't get me wrong. I think Graham Ashcraft, Chase Petty, and some whatever you got to do to cash, whatever you got to do to sweeten the pot. Don't want to sound like Colin Cowherd and say draft capital. Right. Bottom line is, No Chase Burns. I don't think there's a return out there that would justify moving on from Chase Burns. Or am I wrong? Is there a package out there that would make sense to move on from Chase Burns?
No, I think Chase Burns is completely untouchable. However, before I go on Chase Burns, I'll spin it back to you. You replace Chase Burns' name with Rhett Lauder in that trade, Kinner. Are you taking that trade?
Yes.
Okay, interesting. Because at this time last year, Rhett Lauder was Chase Burns. He was our number 1 pitching prospect. We had just taken him in the top 10.
Maybe.
I think it's an interesting conversation.
Right now, the strength of the Reds farm system is their pitching depth. And I don't want to go blow it all up just to blow it all up. But the question is okay, if we're just using this article right here, if we're just using this trade scenario of Jarren Duran, is Jarren Duran the type of talent that you risk moving on from a top pitching prospect, not Chase Burns, but Rhett Lauder? And by the way, we do this thing every year. Chase Burns right now is untouchable. The Reds can go get one of the best pitchers in baseball. That's the next exciting prospect. And now we're not as enamored by Chase Burns. That's how this works. But
that's why I asked the question.
Yeah. Or you do Rhett Lauder, no Chase Petty. Rhett Lauder, Graham Ashcraft. Boom.
Here's what I would do if I was trading Reds pitching for an outfield bat like a Jarren Duran, which I would love to do. I think this is one of few moves that I would like to make in terms of a buy. This is a guy who has multiple years of team control, very, very young, fits the timeline of this core at a position of need in the outfield. Trade one of the guys that's here.
Yeah.
Trade Lodolo.
I was about to say
Trade
Lodolo.
Abbott. Trade one of these guys.
Boston could win now with Lodolo. Boston would need that.
Correct.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is we're not winning now, so who cares if the guy's in the MLB? Yeah. If Chase Burns is going to come up and be Hunter Greene and be an ace on this rotation, I'm not moving him. Because when am I banking on the Reds being competitive? It sucks to say out loud, but it's 2026, 2027. That's when Chase Burns is here.
Yeah.
That's when Chase Burns is fresh. I would love for the Reds to move Nick Lodolo. I think he is the natural piece that gets moved here. Andrew Abbott has seized that number 2 spot in the rotation this year. I'm not the biggest Abbott guy. I never have been, but there's nothing else you can say at this point. Nick Lodolo is viewed as the second pitcher in the Reds rotation off name only. Andrew Abbott has been the better pitcher than Nick Lodolo when they've both been healthy, and Andrew Abbott's been healthy more often. So he's the number 2 pitcher in this rotation now, and I guess the question is, do you want 2 lefties in your top 3? And if you don't, Nick Lodolo is an easy one to move. I'm moving him before I move Lauder, before I move Burns, certainly putting Hunter Greene in the untouchable category. And I guess if you'd rather move Abbott, I wouldn't kill you for it, but I'd probably lean Lodolo at this point. I would like to move one of those starting pitchers. Do you remember back in 2023 when the Reds, after that win streak in June, were sitting at the trade deadline and we were like, we need a starting pitcher. We got to go get one. And the sentiment everyone started to realize was they're not out there. Good starting pitchers aren't out there in the trade deadline for teams that want to win and compete in this playoffs this season. So the fact that we have Nick Martinez on a 1-year deal, pitching pretty well right now, and Nick Lodolo, who maybe you can talk yourself into not having a spot when everyone gets here and gets to their peak, seize that in a year where you're not going to compete. Seize that and maximize on having 2 of the best pitchers on the trade market at the trade deadline and get some awesome prospects. And when you're here in 2026 and 2027, hopefully they work out better than this group has.
Yeah, the trade partner matters too. You know, if you're trading to a team that's built that's similar to the Reds, where you have to build through prospects, sending a Nick Lodolo to a team that's like the Reds wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. But Boston makes sense if you want to pull a trigger like that because they can afford him. They can go add talent if they wanted. Now they're sitting at 30 and 34. Right. But this Nick Lodolo move for Boston would be for next season. And this move for the Reds, you know, in going to get Duran would be for next season as well. But also 2 key pieces that, who knows, you get hot down the stretch. Both could be key contributors to the Red Sox and the Reds if they pull the trigger. Do you anticipate, I mean, like we did this last year where we're getting kind of anxious and excited about the idea, but the Reds let you down at the deadline more times than not. For sure. But I keep going back to that 2019 year. The Reds told you in 2019, we are going to be aggressive this offseason. We understood why last year, although we didn't like it, why they weren't aggressive because the uncertainty of the TV deal. Maybe this is the deadline that the Reds tell us, just like they did in 19. We're going to be aggressive this offseason, and it's going to start with getting a key outfielder like this at the deadline. If we have to move on from Nick Lodolo, fine. You know, we'll be without him next year. Going to potentially be you will be without Nick Martinez next year, but you still have Hunter Greene. Andrew Abbott's making this easier. Obviously, you got that deal done with Brady Singer, and then you have Rhett Lauder, and you have Chase Burns coming up through the system. That's your freaking rotation right there. I think this would make all the sense in the world. I don't want to see.
Not to mention, we're just throwing Chase Petty out.
Yes.
I understand he's been bad when he's been up here. He is our number 5 prospect, and he's been very, very good in the minors. He struggled coming up when he wasn't supposed to be up. He came up because he had to, and it didn't look great. But this is a guy who was a main return in, I'm forgetting which trade with the Twins now, but he was a main return in one of those Twins trades. And I think it was Malley, yeah, for sure. And the fact that he's now close you got to consider him as one of the pieces of that rotation in the future. I know it hasn't been pretty right now, but he still is as a top 5 prospect. So, yeah, I think the depth is insane, and I certainly like having that as a strength of this team. It's great to see, someone goes down and you don't enter full panic mode. Well, I guess we still are because we're starting Wade Miley, but it's nice to think you're not going to enter full panic mode with this awesome pitching depth, but it seems like, thank you, Alex Wallace. Alex Wallace was the Sonny Gray trade. The Reds, man, that's one thing they do. They make a lot of big trades, and they only make them with 2 teams. Shout out the Mariners and the Twins.